One of the other places that I love to go to is, we call it Memorial Hall or the Abraham Lincoln Post up on Green Street,
Yes.
or even some of the local people just call it the Green Street Hall. But the original name for this structure was the Samuel Dexter Mansion. And I've heard some great stories about the reason why it was sitting on a hill so that he could look down on everyone.
Well, we don't know for sure. Only Dexter would be able to tell us. No, I think he just found a good lot, and it did have a view of the western sky. He built his house there, a mansion actually, in 1791. So while not the earliest house to be rebuilt after the Revolution, it was certainly among the early ones. Samuel Dexter was a very famous man in his time. He was in politics. He was an attorney. He held claim to political office in Massachusetts as a representative and a senator. He got the attention of the administration in Washington at the time that John Adams was elected, and John Adams brought him to Washington and made him at various times Secretary of War and Secretary of the Treasury. And after his death, Adams said of Dexter that he was one of the ablest men he had ever known, and assisted the president in many ways, and he had great admiration for Samuel Dexter.
He didn't hold those two political titles at the same time. They
No,
were
no.
two different-
Well, it was first he was Secretary of War. We would call it Defense these days, and he then later took on the office of Secretary of the Treasury. Obviously, the two of them not simultaneous. Just a little sidebar. I was in the Coast Guard Reserve for my period of military service, and I heard a lot about the Coast Guard cutter Dexter. And it turns out that the Treasury Department, which at that point in time administered the Coast Guard, started naming their cutters after former secretaries of the Treasury. So of course Dexter had to show up in that
Samuel
list.
Dexter, that's
So I heard
great.
a lot about the cutter Dexter in my day. But anyway, that's, as I say.
Now, when he was Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense, was that during wartime or was it during peacetime? Do you know?
I don't have a degree of certainty on that. I know the War of 1812 occurred in that time frame, so he may have had some input in that respect, but I can't say for sure.
The reason why I ask is because there's a great story that goes around, and again, I don't know it for fact, but during the War of 1812, he held a ball on the top floor, supposedly in honor of General Andrew Jackson. Unfortunately, General Jackson was unable to attend, but some of his officers did attend, and at the time I was told it was the grandest function of the year in Charlestown. So that's why I was wondering, because it was being during the War of 1812.
Right. Yeah, that, I think, since you mentioned that time frame, I think that it's unlikely that Dexter was a wartime Secretary of War.
That would be quite the scandal, the Secretary of War having a big cotillion at his residence.
Right.
You know, but then again, according to
During time of hostilities.
During hostilities, yeah. But the Samuel Dexter House, the building has been there since then, and it's gone through a number of phases.
The building has been there since 1791. It's gone through some modifications. It started out as what they call a late Georgian federal building. It once had a hipped roof and central doorway and symmetrical windows. It had all the keynotes of the federal style, and then was later rehabilitated or remodeled so that what you see today isn't what they started out with. The remodeling included adding a third floor to the two floors that were originally there, and it has no windows in the third floor. I suppose that level was used for storage. It has some artistically shaped shingles
Mhm.
in that third floor, and then a cupola was added, a square cupola. So refinements that
it
got
has those-
added over the years, sometimes under owners other than Dexter. And the wonderful highlight of the Dexter property history was during a period of time when a owner who was a superb gardener was living in the house, and he planted the grounds of the Dexter Mansion to fruit trees and ornamental trees, and it was quite a showcase. People would come from miles around just to see the trees and the way that he had developed the property. So it had a wonderful period when it was well and beautifully landscaped. Over time, unfortunately, the Dexter house was in other ownerships begun to be broken up.
Mhm.
And as we perhaps know, there was a row of row houses that faced Thompson Square that was known as Dexter Row.
Yep.
And they started out with 6, and now they're down to 3, but it was a very handsome row of row houses. And just uphill from the Dexter Row was the Winthrop Congregational Church. So that fell between Dexter Row and the house. And then uphill of the house, they turned that into other residential building uses, and it has a series of apartment houses on that side. So
They call that Dexter Court.
Yes, yeah.
So starting down on the Main Street side, you've got
Right.
Dexter Row. Going up Green Street, you've got the Dexter Mansion, and then when you get up to High Street, so it encompassed an entire block area.
Yes, well, that was the beauty of it. He made a wonderful decision to take over that entire swath of land between Main Street and High Street, and that gave room for a beautifully landscaped grounds to surround his mansion. So he chose well, and of course, as I was saying, an owner came along who was a professional horticulturist and turned the whole grounds into a beautiful showcase for tree plantings.
Now after the Civil War, it became the Abraham Lincoln Post number 11.
That's correct.
GAR, Grand Army of the Republic.
That's right.
And just recently they found the documentation stating that that's where the post was. Can you tell us a little bit about how it changed from private ownership to the
Yes.
to where it currently is as a veterans?
Right, yeah, you
Veterans
have
Hall.
it exactly right. Sometime between 1885 and 1892, it was purchased and turned into the GAR post number 11, and used by them until into the 20th century for a place for veterans to gather and reminisce and know fellowship, and served that function very beautifully. And as a matter of fact, as a place for veterans to gather, it's still in that function and still has the name that has been carried over of GAR post number 11. So the tradition goes on, and it needs a lot of refurbishment at this point in time, but it still shows signs of its stateliness as
Right.
a mansion from its earliest times.